Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. We told you before we took that break that today on the program we'll be taking a look at the art of spoken words. And like I did say, spoken words represents different things to many people, for practitioners, for people who just love the arts, for people who love the stringing, the rhythm, everything that spoken words really represents. And we do have a guest in the studio today, and together we'll be taking a look at this particular piece of artwork as it's seen and how it remains relevant, especially today where everything is beginning to shift into the digital space. Is this piece of artwork still as relevant as possible, and does it still have a space in today's world? We have our guest this morning. We're glad to welcome Daggar Tolar in the studio this morning. He's a creative writer and a poet. Thank you for being here on the program.
Thank you very much.
This morning. Let's start this way. Again, like I said, spoken words, for so many, it represents different things. For those who are in the art itself, it means something. For those who just love to hear.
The sound.
Yes, the sound, the rhythm, the flow, it means a whole lot to them as well. But when we take spoken word as an art itself, is it developed? Is it learned? Is it inbuilt?
Well, let me begin by saying that spoken word is poetry. It's poetry. It's poetry, and there'll be no taking away, from that general categorization. But the term itself, spoken word, it's an attempt to return us back to the import of orality. We are moving from a generation where the written text was the dominant basis by which, ideas, phenomena, were communicated and transmitted. For a generation that access to higher education is no longer an automatic thing for a majority of young people. The heart of the spoken word becomes something that is learned directly from the street, directly from the communities. And of course, we must pose the additional possibility of transiting this orality, ultimately to the text, and ultimately too as a scholarly phenomenon that can be studied, articulated, so that it becomes something that we do not just take as a phenomenon on the street. Particularly because we live in the new colonial world, and for a lot of young people, the need to find out who they are, the need to begin to express not just their feelings, their personality, their culture, particularly the things that they are experiencing. Spoken word becomes, that vehicle with which a lot of young people are beginning to find themselves, to find their voice. I'm here at LTV, the voice of Lagos. In reality, the voice of a city, the voice of millions of people who want to come alive, who want to feel their own handprints and bring the entirety of their own experience into expression. This, for me, is what spoken word is, and it's bound to grow as we move
from generation to generation. So, earlier you did say that it's poetry. But then it is poetry in another form, in the form where you can actually express not only yourself, you can express your community, express your nation, express it in such a way that even if ordinarily you are a very quiet person, this is an avenue for you to communicate, to reach millions of people. So again, I will go back to how this is developed innately. Would you also say that it is a form of expression that gives you the larger-than-life way to be able to get your feelings, across to a larger audience?
Well, ultimately, there is a cliche that action speaks louder than words. But again, too, you're back to how do you express existence? Why are we humans in the first instance? We are humans because we not only were able to free our four limbs as working instruments, but the additional fact that we're able to develop a coded expression, a language We try to document our history, to document our experience. This is what has given the human mind the extra, advantage over all of the other living species in the animal kingdom. So, and the moment we begin to express ourselves, we begin to bring everything in our environment into meaning. So yes, you are not far from it to say that for young people living in a different world, distinct from the kind of world the older generation grew up in. And this is in relation to all of the difficulties young people have to go through today. So to have to hold on to a craft that allows them to bring their feelings and their existence into print, into expression, is something that we must fully appreciate going forward.
So for spoken words, is it... are there genres in spoken words? Because again, like I said, some people, would act spoken words. Some people will sing spoken words. Some people will speak
it up
spoken words. And of course, we do. The reason why I'm asking if there are genres is because of all of these actions I've mentioned, and also we've realized that sometimes also you have pacing, you have modulation, you have different ways of expression when it comes to the art of spoken words itself. So again, I ask, spoken words, does it have genres, or you just find the niche that works for you as an individual?
Well, the reality is that poetry, provides all of the latitudes, include the longitude as well, for people to find what best suits how they can express themselves. Of course, don't forget the defining foundation for poetry is rhythm. Music, whichever way you want to, categorize that. And this is key for all form. I was in an event with some young people yesterday, and somebody came on stage and started with roll, 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 die boat. And of course, all of us who were older were shocked. But he used that as an introductory, and to take those of us who were older, into
that realm where you could connect.
And we were all wowed when we saw this young chap, somebody who just finished the secondary school just less than 2-3 months ago, articulating all of the entirety of his experience about what it means to be that age, living in a country like so. So you're entirely not wrong to say that each and different spoken word acts, try to see what they will do differently, to be able to be seen as distinct as who they are, different from the next person that comes on stage. But if you ask me, what we must celebrate about spoken word are two things. First, because it's providing, it's creating a new cultural level of expression. And trying to make young people focus not just inside of themselves, but develop the thought process. And that for me is significant, because well, permit me to use this phrase, we have been railroaded into a so-called Olodo generation, where young people are seen to not be reflecting on themselves, and they are condemned to just be consumers. So what spoken word does is that it's creating a new level of not just cultural expression, but the development of the thought process. Because the mind must work to be able to articulate any line. The line must connect to the environment and the entirety of the society to constantly continue to be able to produce new forms of this art. So that for me is one thing we must celebrate. The second thing is that the spoken word breaks the entirety of the myths about poetry is an extremely difficult act. And allow me say this, allow me do this. What is poetry if the entirety of the architecture of literature is seen to not be mathematics? And that it is not in any way sympathetic to figures and numbers. But tell me, citizens here, are they not numbers?
Daggar, are you performing right now, or are we still discussing? I just needed to be sure. I just needed to be sure if we were still on this conversation or you were already transported into your realm.
The conversation is spoken word, and there can be no better means to bring this point more clearer.
Absolutely.
And home, to the fact than through this example. And if you look at this short piece, the use of rhymes, and which is the second major point we must state. Okay. We must break this myth that poetry is the most difficult harm of literature.
Even though it is. Even though it is.
You'll be amazed what young people are doing with it on the street. Without all of the necessary university education, without having beholded themselves before professors, and masters of the language.
Okay.
And this is what we must point out. The basis of all writing, of all literature, is language.
Okay.
The respect we have for Soyinka today it's not just his mastery of the English language, but because he constantly continues to connect the entirety of his own African cosmology, and using the English language as a form of expression.
Right.
Every child grows up in a particular environment, and not just the parent, the school and the entirety of the society makes it imperative, compulsory, that a language must be developed. And the moment that is developed, what you now do with the language is open to whatever experiences life opens you up to.
Right.
So, and for me, the second point is to say that our universities must be challenged.
Okay.
This is Lagos, for example. This will not be the first, second, third, and most likely it's not going to be the last time that LTV is bringing this issue on board for discussion.
Right.
So we must pose this challenge to our universities.
Okay.
I do not run away from the fact that the classics, the Soyinka, the Achebes must continue to be point of reference. But a new, and you have used the appropriate word, even though I don't want to entirely see spoken word as distinct and that it should be carved out of the entire school of poetry.
Okay.
But the truth is that a lot of new materials are
coming up every day. I'll still go back to, I asked you earlier on if there were genres in a spoken word, and you didn't quite answer, even though you did agree that that was a possibility. So going back to the genre in spoken words, are there areas that seem to be difficult or seem to, difficult to project when it comes to spoken words? Or are there areas where sometimes it is just not as easy to perform in the spoken words?
Well, I don't think there is, because a craft demands a mastery. Right. And the moment that has been attained, there's nothing you cannot tune your mind to articulate and to express.
Okay.
Yes, I think you're correct, but I will want to pin these differences in styles and method to different experience. Take Sage Hassan, for example, who, even though he doesn't agree, he is one of the first generation of spoken word poets. Okay. You can even say he's the king, quote and unquote, of spoken word. Somebody who released the CD. But you listen to Sage Hassan, and you see that he has crossed over from rap music into spoken word, into spoken word. And interestingly, return back to the godfathers of rap, Tupac and all of the rest. It's poetry. Yeah. How do you define rap? The rapidity,
the flow of the words,
the flow of words.
Right.
Of course, with increased speed. So yes, that is a journey. But we are Africans. Yeah. Spoken word is not accidental, has not been introduced from the outside to us.
Right.
Because the society of literacy of this society was originally orality. Okay. So it's a rediscovery in a generation where access to formal education is declining.
Okay. So in looking at how you've painted the picture of spoken words, Must okay, no, let me rephrase this. Not must. Can spoken words only be achieved with the English or the Pidgin language? Because again, I know that things, especially with the Yorubas,
Yeah.
things like
Ewi.
ewi, things like oriki, do they fall into that category?
Exactly.
Okay.
You know,
So,
and this is the last point I've made,
okay.
that we are not strangers to this phenomenon. Of course, under the new categorization of spoken word, people feel that it's something new.
Right.
Orality, the power of expression, the power of sound, you know, has been with us for a long time.
Right.
Pre-colonial, you know, pre-slavery era, and all of the rest. And the power of word and sound is constantly a bonding, you know, strength and thread, which as human beings we can never have done without.
Okay.
And to rediscover this in a modern society, especially from the framework of a ghettoized city,
Okay.
quote and unquote, you know, it becomes something that we must all begin to work to celebrate. The fact that people who have not necessarily seen the four walls of a university of higher education, this does not mean that there are not a lot of undergraduates, you know, and university students that are doing it extremely fantastically well,
Okay.
you know, with spoken word.
Right.
And it reemphasizes the point you had made earlier, that it's not a free walk in and free walk out.
Right.
There is the hard work that must be done.
Right.
There is the reading. There is the mastery of the number one tool, which is the language. The
Right.
language must be mastered.
How do you marry spoken words with storytelling? Because sometimes, again, you realize that when spoken words are said, it means a whole lot. Sometimes it's a storytelling, sometimes it's just admonition, sometimes it is for social change, sometimes there's always a theme of reference, usually when spoken words are said. But how do we marry? Is there a thin line between spoken words and storytelling?
I think I would say that every spoken word artist or poet, you know, will have to define for himself or herself,
Okay.
you know, what approach he or she wants to
take,
adopt.
okay.
You know, and different styles. Ukwa is no longer in the country currently. She's also a page poet and also a spoken word poet. And when you hear Ukwa perform, she blends our ethic language, you know, and succeed with every of her piece to tell stories.
Right.
Clementina is another poet from Ajigule who, if you listen to, you know, she dedicates the entirety of her heart, you know, to the conditions of young girls everywhere in this country. And she tells the stories of pains, you know, that young girls go through.
Right.
So storytelling,
Right.
you know, is not something you can take away from
spoken
poetry,
word, okay.
you know, and from spoken words in
right.
entirety.
Okay.
Before I came in here, I was chatting with a poet, of course, a page poet, you know, who, when I was growing up, was one of those people I admire in terms of how he excellently applies the couplet rhyme for all of his piece.
Okay.
And when you hear him put this into a voice, you know, you are listening to unending stories from Talabishi.
Talabishi, okay. So there's a question here. When I saw this, I quickly went to check what's pastoral poems. And this person says, how do pastoral poems resonate with modern audiences?
Well, let me define that from two angles.
Okay.
From a scholarly point, you'll be referring to the question of poems that has to do
with the
with our rural setting and countryside.
Okay.
But it's not impossible. This person is also referring to the emerging role of a Christian-dominated spoken word from one church to another church.
Okay.
And the reason for this is that it provides a huge audience.
Okay.
There are those
we're
yes,
God-loving nation.
Yes. There are those who you know who think the crisis we are confronting is the question of our distance, you know, from God and all of the values as espoused either by the Christian faith or the Islamic faith. And they see that template with all of the millions of audience they can access at every church service, to express themselves. I, not necessarily very religious, also welcome this platform because it is a platform for young people. What we must celebrate is that people are constantly engaging the words, and they are using their mind, to provide meaning and project, their experiences religiously, politically, culturally, and otherwise. You have also mentioned, Hewi, the import of cultural intervention in the spoken word. What will you say Hewi is? Hewi is spoken word
in the local dialect.
Well, I will use the word local.
In the
in
traditional dialect. Okay, right. So from what we've said so far this morning, and let's look at the crop of young people that you've come in contact with today. You still give an example of someone you saw yesterday, a very young person, who also performed, I'm sure that it was a very captivating performance yesterday. But if you were to look at the young people of today battling with so many issues, especially again because of the digital world and technology, what have you seen as more of, a resonance with the kind of audience that we have today? Because again, we cannot also assume that all audiences are the same. The kind of people that you might resonate with might not be the kind of people that Divine would resonate with. IB Quake, the kind of people she would reach might not be the kind of. So let's talk about generally talking about audiences and perhaps maybe age differences. What would you say are the things that would resonate immediately or are captivating in today's world?
Themes will permanently be broad.
Okay.
And that we must recognize. But I think more important than this question of audience, it's the question of how to ensure that this phenomenon, and it's still emerging, how we must nurture it and ensure that it grows.
Right.
And it is in this context that I think there is no better platform than through the voice of this greatest African city to say that our teachers in our schools have a very important role to play. A lot of teachers who teach literature, they run away from teaching poetry. Again, too, this will be a very good opportunity to appeal to the Ministry of Education to say that spoken word and literature, it's an emerging, recognized field internationally. And we should not hide away from saying it that there is the NLNG Prize for Literature yearly. Right. And poetry takes a turn every 4 years. Okay. With an $100,000 prize. Right. And you can imagine all of these young people translating all of their experiences, even though spoken word into written text, and they can access this one. I'm saying this to say that our teachers in our various schools can no longer ignore poetry. Okay. They can no longer, think that they can hand over text to our students to go and read and ignore the practical experience that can be drawn out.
So can you give what you do not have?
And this is where, as teachers, we have referenced the Ministry of Education. We must
have a self-development.
We must take up all of the process, because this process will further empower. Again, to spoken word becoming one, it's not something that will drop out from the sky. The environment, and the school environment is a perfect one. Okay. In Ajigule, we run what we know as a Hiji House of Poetry, and I don't think that would have been possible without the advantage that His Excellency Lateef Jakonde gave to this state, to have constructed a complex, Africa #1, complex in that working class environment. Okay. And today, of course, given all of the renovation that has taken place. But imagine 34, close to 40 public schools
we're talking about Tolu. We're talking about Tolu Schools complex.
In a single complex.
Right.
And the kind of interactive, growth that can take place with a spoken word festival among all of these young people, and all bringing all of their different experiences. Because it's a working class community again, it's also a potpourri of all of the various ethnic nationalities in Nigeria and all of the rest.
Okay.
But this doesn't take the merit away from the question of the audience.
Right.
What will be the interest of an audience in terms of what they want to hear or listen? And I think we must return back to the masters here. We will show Inka in writing any creative piece, place first and foremost the interest of the audience. Poetry for a society like this, indeed the entirety of literature for a society like this, cannot function or operate on the basis of commerce. It cannot be treated as a commodity.
Right.
Because if you begin to treat that as a commodity, you
stifle
the voice.
Right.
You stifle the innermost feeling that young people want to bring into what? Into life.
Right.
So I think our duty, and using this platform, is to say, of course, we're talking about the school, is to also challenge our parents. For every working class family, it is not enough to put food on the table of young people. It's not enough to have a Bible and Quran in your house. What other books do you have in that house?
Right, so we must begin to develop the
exactly.
innate ability of our children.
Our generation, we are literate today. Of course, we had parents who were not necessarily, they were semi-illiterate.
But they encouraged.
Yeah, they were encouraged. And the fact that they were semi-illiterate and were growing in an environment where education and reading was seen as important, they did everything. The first books I read were books my father bought. Right. Even though I couldn't remember whether he read them or but they
passed them on to you to read them.
Exactly.
Right.
So how many of us think it is important beyond the Bible and the Quran to buy books in our homes? Not necessarily because they've been recommended by
the school.
By the school.
Right. So from what you've identified this morning, looking also at the larger society and a penchant for, again, not wanting to encourage certain things, what do you see as the greatest challenge young people also face here with the kind of audience that would want to sit and watch a performance of the spoken words? Of course, it's something that could also be a barrier.
Yeah.
And I would also tie that to gratification when it comes to spoken words. Is it an art, or is it a piece of a work of art that genuinely is financially rewarding?
Well, in my own days, I would say that I've earned some money, from spoken word poetry. I've had the opportunity to go to South Africa, performed in the African Poetry Festival. There's also the Lagos Poetry Festival and a lot of other poetry festivals that are emerging here. But again, too, if you go into Europe, take London, for example, there is a poet of the city. So there is a way in which the state encourages poetry.
Right.
The president of the US is not inaugurated without a poet, performing, and a poet, identified as somebody who will articulate the entirety of the experience of what that era will look like. So we are back to providing the necessary material support, and the state can't ignore that process.
Okay. Entirely.
Let's have a poet of Nigeria every year, whose duty will be to articulate the experience,
of the country.
And Lagos can give, a path, a new direction in this direction. Let's have an Ajegule poet, who is paid every month for a year by the local government, and on that basis try to articulate the entirety of the experience, and programs of the ideas of those in power, and of course the experiences, interrelating that with what is happening in each of these various communities. We must return back, of course, to the state of the economy. And this is where you are very correct when you say, even though I've tried to theoretically say that we must distance ourselves away from allowing the audience to dictate what you want to write. Banks, corporate organizations are organizing series of programs year in and year out. Beyond just having a comedian, understand, you should also have a poet understand. And this is where I must not fail to mention somebody like D.K. Chukwumerije, who has done wonderful well all over the country. not just performing in series of various platforms, but hosted an independent program of his own that he has taken across various state capital. But the budget for these activities don't come necessarily easy. But as we develop, as we gradually overcome the challenges and difficulties of a new colonial capitalist economy, you can be sure more and more of us who are going to find our leverage. And which is why, again, it is important to encourage spoken word poets to put their texts, to put their materials in written text.
Okay.
More and more of our universities are establishing creative writing courses, which was not there a decade ago.
Okay.
And this will serve as veritable materials, you know, for
learning
purposes.
Right.
And if you ask me, there is no better documentary access to what young people are going through in this past 10 years, or even in this Fourth Republic, outside of the series of hundreds of spoken words that have been written all over the country by young people.
Right. So if you were to take a peep into the next 5 years, where do you see spoken word?
This is 2026, moving us to the eve of the next decade, in the 2030s. Well, I must confess that young people are going through series of difficulties. Of course, there's a challenge of even access to education. There's a challenge of single parenting that is becoming a huge phenomenon for a lot of working class youth. And I'm not just referring to the wars, to the war zones with regards to the Islamic fundamentalist group that have taken over, and non-state actors that are armed to the teeth. I'm referring to environments where young people are growing up. The economic difficulties, if you stumble on the statistics of divorce rate in the north, you'll be amazed what is happening. But come to the southwest, come to Lagos. Is the statistics necessarily any
better?
Different? Exactly. It might not be as alarming as the figure in the north, but these are fundamental issues that will ultimately affect the entirety of the mindset.
Right.
And what that means is that for every one single spoken word young poet that emerges, there are 10, 15, 20, 50 others who will have been able to do the same thing, even do this more better, but on the basis of the difficulties, of the challenges their immediate environment is providing for them, they are unable to do it. And this will ultimately also impact on the quality of audience, of listening here, you know, and you are right to say that as much as a developing journey, where had the audience for this emerging spoken word poet?
Right.
We'll have to create this. We'll have to challenge LTV. We used to run a program here that I even anchored some past a decade ago, you know, on books, you know, and there was this opportunity for young people, spoken word poets, to come on here and all of this. And you wouldn't deny the impact it had on somebody like Uchenwa Adinachi, you know, who you know, had his first public performances on a TV station in a place, you know, like this. And the leverage it provided for him subsequently. So I will say that we all need, you know, to place our hands on the deck and see how we can provide support for this growing industry.
Right, we've heard so much from Daggar Tolar this morning, and also a challenge that for spoken words to actually continue to live and be impactful, we all have a role to play. Before we allow you go, I know that earlier on I asked a question whether or not we're still on the conversation or if you were performing. Of course, you have your camera. Maybe just for a few seconds, just take us through your world. Anything that you chose this morning, and then just perform.
What is poetry if we take away the trigonometry, the architecture of literature, and say that it has nothing to do with mathematics, and that it is completely unsympathetic to figures and numbers? But in this place here, are citizens not numbers? Tell me if our citizens are not numbers, like how we count dead bodies to the unbroken rhythm and melodies of people like me who get shot and beheaded. What is poetry if it's not letter and words, building up the storage of courage to make love and bet life anew? Not to continue in the same struggle of hatred, but to rebet love for people to see themselves as not different from themselves, to break the boundaries of classes and bring people to see themselves as one people. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That was a performance from Daggar Tolar this morning. And, of course, you could hear there that, you know, different issues, of course, in that very short piece he brought to life. For those in your industry, are there spoken words really about love?
There are.
Because oftentimes,
there are poets who...
Oftentimes, we hear things
about social
justice, and sometimes I'm tempted to ask, for those who do spoken words.
Let me see if I can mention a particular name. Now, if any name can come to my head.
To mind.
Of course, we'll do practically nothing else than, you know, that team.
Okay.
You know, and they're doing extremely very well. And all of that.
I'm looking forward to that. It's at least
life, like Marx would say, there's nothing alien. So there's nothing that must be alien to literature. You know, all aspects of human existence must find mirror. Right. You know, in words and letters. Okay.
We'll have to leave it here this morning. Thank you so much, A.J. Daggar Tolar, for finding time to be with us on the program this morning. He's a creative writer and a poet. Thank you for being here on the program.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
All right, that's the much we take on this side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When we return, Adibimpe and Joy will be here with their Lagos conversation.